Tourist-packed hot air balloon crashes mid-air with other one, leaving tourists in fear. Actually, what happened, how it happened, let's deep dive.
You know that image of a hot air balloon just floating peacefully? It's usually so serene.
Yeah, absolutely. Pure tranquility. But lately there's been some news that kind of disrupts that picture a bit.
Exactly. We've seen a few, well, concerning hot air balloon incidents popping up in the news.
Right. They do seem to be clustering a bit, and it naturally makes you pause and, wonder what's going on.
So that's what we're diving into today. We've looked at reports on 3 specific events. One in the Netherlands involving a collision,
Mm-hmm. And then another one in Dubai where a balloon apparently plunged rather suddenly.
and a third in Turkey, Cappadocia, where one crashed into those famous rock formations.
And our goal here isn't just to, list what happened. We want to dig into the reports, see what they suggest about possible causes, contributing factors.
Yeah, understand the context around these events for ballooning as a tourist thing, but, without getting lost in technical jargon.
Exactly. Just get a clearer picture.
Okay, so let's start with the Netherlands. Near Little Gist, a mid-air collision during takeoff, which just sounds inherently alarming.
It really does. And the descriptions in the reports, they paint quite a vivid picture. Tourists screaming.
And the basket of one balloon tilting almost horizontally. That's wow.
Yeah, you can really sense the panic in that moment and the reported cause.
It seems to have been a sudden, pretty powerful gust of wind, just as one balloon was lifting off.
Right. So the wind apparently just pushed it sideways into another balloon that was still on the ground, or maybe just lifting off to you.
It's interesting. This theme of sudden wind gusts keeps coming up, doesn't it?
It really does. We'll see it again. But here, despite the collision, one balloon ended up deflating on the ground, as you might expect.
But the other one,
Remarkably, it apparently regained control and just went up, continued the flight.
that's incredible. And thankfully, no reports of injuries.
Which is amazing considering the visual. But you can imagine the shock for everyone involved, passengers and people watching.
For sure. There's even an eyewitness quote, something like, just as it was lifting off the ground, the wind pulled it up at an angle. That's when things started to go wrong. Yeah, really highlights how fast things can change, from perfectly normal to chaos.
Okay, so that's the Netherlands. Now, shifting to Dubai, this was earlier in the month. A different scenario again.
Right, a sunrise flight over the desert. A dozen tourists. This wasn't a collision. Now, this was described as a sudden plunge. The balloon just dropped rapidly.
Yeah, reports mentioned it tilting sharply, then actually dragging across the desert floor and bouncing violently before it finally stopped. Sounds pretty rough.
Definitely sounds like it could cause injuries. And the reports did mention that, right? Some passengers injured, maybe even unconscious.
Requiring hospital treatment according to those initial accounts, which, suggests a fairly significant event.
But then you have the operating company side of the story.
Which is quite different. They apparently pushed back on calling it a crash.
They called it a hard landing.
Exactly, a hard landing, and they claimed injuries were minor. Everyone discharged quickly.
So a real discrepancy there between what witnesses or initial reports said and the official company line.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about how these incidents get framed, how the information comes out, what constitutes a crash versus a hard landing.
Good point. Okay, incident number 3. Let's go back to last June, Cappadocia, Turkey. Love Valley.
Ah, yes, Cappadocia. Stunning place. Those fairy chimney rock formations are iconic.
And this incident involved a balloon hitting those very formations.
And we have quite a unique perspective here because 2 British tourists in another balloon actually saw it happen.
They filmed it. That heart-stopping moment, as the reports called it.
Yeah, and they described people on the crashing balloon screaming, running around the basket as it hit the rocks.
How many people were on board that one?
20 tourists and 2 pilots. So a fair number of people involved.
And the cause reported here.
Yeah.
Let me guess.
You got it. Another freak gust of wind. This time apparently catching the balloon just as it was trying to land.
Seems like landing and takeoff are vulnerable moments.
Potentially, yeah. The video apparently shows the balloon deflating after hitting the rocks, emergency crews rushing in.
And injuries. Similar outcome to the Netherlands.
Pretty much. One tourist reportedly fainted, needed some help, but again, thankfully, no serious injuries reported.
Another lucky escape, really, considering hitting solid rock.
It is, and what's interesting is what one of the witnesses said afterwards.
Oh, yeah?
She mentioned she'd flown there before, felt it was very safe, and she thought this was genuinely just a freak accident.
Okay.
But she also added something about the geography, the narrow valleys there, and pilots sometimes flying low for better views. She seemed to suggest that maybe the terrain itself makes things a bit trickier if the weather suddenly turns.
That's an interesting angle. The specific environment playing a role.
So when you put these three incidents together, the collision in the Netherlands, the plunge or hard landing in Dubai, the rock strike in Turkey.
They're all different, but seeing them happen relatively close together or hearing about them now, it does kind of raise alarms, doesn't it?
It certainly prompts a conversation about the overall safety picture for hot air ballooning, especially as a popular tourist activity. You start to look for patterns.
And the most obvious pattern, as we said, is the weather. These unpredictable gusts of wind mentioned in all three cases.
It really underscores the challenge of dealing with localized sudden weather changes when you're, floating in the air. How well can that be predicted or managed?
And then there's that point from Cappadocia, the tight flight paths and busy tourist spots.
Right. Could the sheer volume of balloons in popular areas or the routes they take to maximize views inadvertently add another layer of risk, especially when combined with unpredictable weather?
It feels like, even though many operators are likely very safe and follow strict rules,
Absolutely. The industry often highlights its safety record.
these events are a reminder that there are inherent risks. You're dealing with altitude, weather, complex equipment. Things can go wrong,
Precisely. Which brings us back to the advice often given to people thinking about taking a flight.
which is,
Basically, do your homework, choose operators who have a strong reputation for safety, look into their track record.
and pay attention to the weather conditions yourself before you go up. Be an informed passenger.
Yeah, that seems like really solid, practical advice in light of all this.
So, wrapping this up, it seems clear that hot air ballooning offers an incredible, often unforgettable experience. That allure is definitely there.
No doubt. Those views, that feeling of peace.
But these recent incidents serve as a pretty stark reminder that unforeseen things can happen. It highlights that balance between seeking adventure and, well, being aware of the potential risks.
It really does. And maybe that leaves us with a question for you, listening. When you think about these incidents and adventure tourism in general, what factors do you believe are the most critical for ensuring safety?
It's a better forecasting, stricter regulations, pilot training, the operator's reputation. Something else?
Yeah, it's that fascinating intersection, isn't it? Our desire for these amazing experiences versus the absolute need to keep people safe. Lots to think about.
Why is all happening? Is it crashes, collision? Comment your thoughts on this story. Thanks.